Great. So welcome everybody to Building Equitable Farmland Tenure for Upper Midwest Farmers, Navigating FSA Loans. This is the third in our series of webinars on Equitable Farmland Tenure. If you guys haven't seen them already, we do have two introductory webinars already on YouTube. And I would recommend that you look these over. Because they provide a great overview of just definitions of equity, broader issues of that are facing farmers, and they give the groundwork before the more specific in the weeds webinars that we'll be hosting over the next couple of months. And the theme of today's webinar is navigating FSA lending. So how do we do this while keeping in mind the lessons that we learned about equity from the prior webinars? And our objectives are understanding the central barriers farmers experience, navigating the USDA lending system, and gaining competency in addressing those challenges. And then also discussing strategies for navigating FSA programs specific to farmers farming or owning land together, so cooperatives and collective landholding entities. So that's what we're doing. My name is Noah Wirtz. I'm the Agrarian Commons Communications and Outreach Coordinator, and I'm joined by an excellent group of people who, if you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves right now. These are the folks who have helped organize the webinar and will be helping to lead it today.
I'm happy to pop in and Valentine Tenure. I'm actually just going to put in the chat the direct link to those previous two YouTube videos of the previous webinars. And most of you have heard me talk enough, so I'll pass it over to Gary.
Hello, I'm Gary Hampton, Twin City transplant, and I do cooperative and community development, and I'm working with the SARE project, helping coordinate. And I will pass it to Moses.
Hello, I'm Moses Momani. I am a farmer in Cambridge, grow vegetables and sell to the market. I also mentor other beginning farmers through Kilimo, Minnesota. And so I'm happy to be here, and I'll pass it to Naima.
Thanks, Moses. Hi, everyone. My name is Naima Dore, currently farming in Alexandria. Recently purchased a farm in Greater Cambridge. I farm with my husband. We're vegetable growers. Thanks. And I think everyone went, right, Noah?
Yep, that's everyone. And so today we're going to have a presentation from Naima, and then an opportunity to discuss your experiences with FSA lending and connect with expert or navigator with expertise in FSA programs. And then Stephen Carpenter is going to be presenting the FSA's equity document, followed by questions with Stephen and closing remarks. So without further ado, Naima, would you like to start your presentation?
Sure, I'm going to do my best to share.
Okay.
Allow me. Okay. All right. Here we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Forgive me, I put this presentation less than an hour ago. As you know, being a farmer, we're constantly dealing with a lot, especially this time of year. So again, my name is Naima. I farm with my husband. And I wanted to share quickly just the backstory of how we started and got into farming. It all started inside of our tiny apartment, and we were growing a lot of microgreens, and quickly realized that's not sustainable, and transitioned to our community garden at the time when we lived in Indian Prairie. Initially when we wanted to explore the idea of growing food that is fresh and local, and that we exactly knew where it was coming from. The idea wasn't for us to get into business, let alone, where we're at now, which I will get into later. My husband and I don't have a farming background. So like I said, it all started inside our apartment, which led to so many other things. But just to put the picture and then the name, here's a picture of me and here's a picture of us. And we've been doing this since 2016. We started at Big River Farms, which is an incubator farm. And we were farming there, I believe, 3 years, so 2016, 2017, 2018. And we realized, this is a lifestyle for us at this point, and we wanted to continue and scale up. We wanted to explore the idea of land ownership, and we started our process of looking into that. And it's been a really interesting journey for us. Over the years, we've been really struggling with finding the right land, meaning, land that already established, that is healthy, that, because we wanted to continue the practices that we established at Big River, basically just making sure that we don't spray and we're not using any chemicals in our production. So we quickly realized, the land that we were thinking about would mean that we would have to leave the Twin Cities and look into like rural farmland, which is, difficult because if you already have established market in the city, that would mean that, you would have to commute and sacrifice and be away from your community. So our journey with FSA was a bit overwhelming. Like I said, my husband and I, we don't have a farming background, and a system that was never designed for a BIPOC farmer. It's overwhelming to understand just the language and how to navigate these resources, and especially the direct loan that we were targeting, because we thought that would be really a good fit for us, which ultimately is what we got for our recent purchase. The direct loan is a lie. I think those of us who don't have that background or understanding, it's really difficult to navigate. The paperwork can be overwhelming. I'm thrilled that they were able to revise the paperwork and reduce it to 13 pages, I believe, last time I checked. But that 13 pages can mean a lot if you don't understand what they're asking, and the outcome can be different. Because, when you're looking to buy land as a farmer who's thinking about, not losing, growing season like we have, we have to invest in inspection. So it was all about timing. Every time we attempted, especially our first time attempting to purchase the land, our application was just sitting at someone's desk for the longest time until the seller was like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna move on to the next person. And so we experienced that, and it was frustrating, but each process we gained knowledge and we gained experience. And that's the reason why I like to share my story and my family story, because, I think there's so many people experiencing that. I just want to make sure that people understand that it's not an easy process, but it's doable, and it's all about relationship building. I'm an introvert, so it's really hard for me to put myself out there. But I do my best to communicate in terms of what we're doing and what we hope to do and continue to do for our community, because this is at this point the way that we're farming and the interest and the requests that we're getting from the community. We just have to continue doing what we can and make our voice in terms of what resources we need. And it's all about the relationship building. So I've reached out to FSA. One of the things I do is I invite them to the farm so they can see and understand our operation, for one, because it's hard to explain on paper what we're trying to do, especially if they're not familiar with that. This is my personal experience with the folks that I encountered with throughout the years in different areas. So keep in mind that we attempted to purchase farm multiple counties. So in a way, it was wonderful to connect with different agencies and different people in different counties. But at the same time, it was frustrating because you're losing time and money for us because, like I said, each attempt we lost money in inspection, just resources, commuting back and forth. That's costly. It adds up. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure when I connect with the FSA, how do we simplify what you're asking? Especially if I'm not familiar with your resources. When is the deadline? Because they can be overwhelming. Every resource has deadlines, especially if you're going through with the direct loan. You don't want to lose the opportunity for the other party to say, I can't wait for you because this is taking 6 months, 9 months, which it can take that long, And so I know the first time we attempted, it took months to even hear, whether we were approved or not, let alone, go through the process until we get the appraisal back, which the second time the appraisal came back really high, and so we were not able to move forward with that closing. But each time, I gained experience and knowledge, and I try to ask questions and say, hey, have you thought about doing it this way versus this way, because specialty fruits and vegetables, it's such a unique, group of farmers that are really passionate, and I would love to see more young farmers and immigrant farmers, but it's hard on us to access land when we can't even get these resources like the direct loan, for instance. Again, if things are just too difficult to navigate and get into. So I will say I had really great conversation with a lot of folks, and I think we're headed the right direction in terms of improving these programs. Although, historically, a lot of these programs were not so kind, and not so kind specifically to BIPOC farmers. I am hopeful, and my part as a farmer and someone who, because of time, I could go on and tell you in depth about all the challenges and all the success. But I will say, I think I'm just thrilled for what's coming for our state, specifically here in Minnesota. Now that we have more immigrant farmers that are interested in farming, which I think that was my other point. The community and the collective effort that I always receive, comments about, what would it be, if we farm together collectively? And that's something that I originally explored and quickly realized the way our enterprise is set up, it just wouldn't make sense to farm with the community. But with the background of, doing things communal and just that community piece was so important for me. it just didn't make sense in terms of what we were trying to get from FSA. So, but I am hopeful. I would like to see more community land ownership, and I will stop there. I'm not sure if I hit the 15-minute mark, but feel free to reach out. That's my email, Naima's Farm with S. With any questions, or if you want to learn more about our operation. And I am also the executive director of Somali American Farmers Association, which is a targeted project in South Minneapolis. Our goal is to expand and create an integrated farm that is culturally, specific to my community or East Africans. So if you know a landowner out there who's interested in working with me and interested in working with the community, I would like to explore that. Thank you for your time. I will stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you, Naima. So we have a couple minutes for questions. If anybody has any questions about Naima's experience with FSA loans, or really anything.
I can do that, Diane. Thanks.
Noah, there's a question in the chat to Naima. When was your first attempt at applying for FSA and what year?
Okay. It was, I want to say 2020, 2019, late 2019, early 2020. And that experience was just awful to begin with. And the reason why I say that is I always advocate for Navigators, but I didn't have the best experience. And so for that reason, I decided to just do it myself, and, I tell a lot of the immigrant farmers, young farmers that I work with, don't get discouraged by my story. Hopefully you'll find some kind of inspiration to continue. It's not an easy process. It's not. I mean, going through that process has taught me, like I said earlier, these programs were never designed for BIPOC farmers. And you just have to pivot and figure out ways to connect with the right individual. And I understand, like, on their end, they're dealing with so much paperwork, the whole bureaucracy of dealing with government agency. It can be overwhelming, but it's also something that is doable. It's just, you just have to find the right individual who's willing to hold your hand, basically, and go through the process with you.
Thank you, Naima. There's another question, Naima. Were there other types of funding that you explored?
Within FSA? So yeah, I mean, there's limitation to their programs. I know that when we purchased the land, I wanted to explore getting loan from them for fencing, because the new land doesn't have fencing, and I was told no. So, there are some ups and downs to their programs and their resources. So, which it didn't make any sense, because they were willing to give me funding for a well. I'm like, well, we're vegetable growers, why wouldn't you fund me this other crucial, big item? It's a big ticketed, it's not cheap to do fencing. So I was a bit overwhelmed and confused about that. Yes, I see a question about 3 years of Schedule F. Yes, so So I'm glad you brought that up, because at the time, because of our first and second, by the time our third attempt failed, it was hard for us to like show them our records, like a consistent record. But I was able to use our 3-year record from the incubator farm, if that makes sense, just to showcase that, hey, you know, we have a consistent business plan, and we can showcase that we can, you know, deliver this. You know, basically they want to see if you have the ability to pay this loan, and we were able to show them that.
We have a few new questions in the chat, but I wanted to make sure we get to Yvonne's question, which is, did you find the land first, or did you complete the loan first?
Oh, great question. You have to, which is weird, it's backwards. So you have to find the land before you even can submit the application. And so it's always tricky, because it's exciting when you find the land, but then your time is going, because the moment you sign that purchase agreement, the other party, unless they, you know, they understand and they're familiar with FSA process and they're patient. That's why I always say target someone that you know, that understands the process, two, who's willing to support you until the end, whatever the outcome is, whether you get it or not. You know, but if you're dealing with a seller who doesn't understand the process, then, you know, it's up in the air. What was your motivation? My motivation is always my family. You know, our goal is to build wealth for our 2 children who started the process with us in the beginning, and they motivate me a lot. But ultimately, you know, besides, you know, small farms like us, you know, having a successful outcome of purchasing land and going through the process, I would love to see, my dream is, you know, for my community to have land ownership and grow collectively. Not a lot of the community members want to do individual, you know, farming. And so hopefully, you know, there's some changes coming, and you know, we see more collective farms in Minnesota, and that's my dream and hope.
Great. Yeah, we have time for a couple more questions if anybody wants to squeeze one in. But otherwise, we can move on. I'm just gonna take a moment in case anybody has something. Lori, you have your hand raised.
Just a super quick question, Naima, on, you know, more African folks and immigrants. Do you have any idea of a number right now of folks that would collectively like to farm together? Is there any kind of range of number that you know of?
I would leave that question to Moses. I think Moses works with much larger number of Africans. I hate to put you on the spot, Moses, but also a great question for MDA, you know. I think there are groups of people, especially for my community, who've over the years been asking. And that's how I end up getting involved in this project, to be honest with you, because I was approached by a group of members from my community who wanted to farm collectively. And so with the information that I had at the moment, I was like, this is all I got. And it was not enough, and it's still not enough. So I hope that answers your question.
Great. And what was the MDA acronym that you shared?
Sorry, Minnesota Department of Agriculture.
Thank you.
And Moses,
Just one,
yep, go ahead,
Yeah.
Moses.
Thank you, Naima. I just want to add, I started working with other immigrants, and along with that came other beginning farmers, even those who are not immigrants, because of the pandemic and the George Floyd matter. People who are gardening wanted to come out and find spaces where they could use that to heal, but also and then in the process, they felt like, we farm communal in the city gardens. We can do this in the peri-urban area and the rural areas, but anything new, any unknown always makes people want to be feel some sort of safety in numbers and all that. But also it's just not just being out there, but also, tackling sales, marketing. You just want to be reassured when you are in a group. So a lot of farmers I work with, they are forming smaller groups that they're working together, like co-ops, LLCs. They're always looking for opportunities to access land together. And it's always a disappointment when we say, well, that's not gonna be easy. I mean, I'll give you an example. Farmers now are getting the down payment assistance from the Department of Agriculture. I think I have 4 or some that I'm working with, but they're coming and saying, can't we buy it together? Can we put this money together and buy land? And I kind of struggle to explain that I don't know how you can put that money and buy one piece of land. So yeah. And I see more people will be coming out wanting to buy land as a community. So yeah, I won't say there's a number out there, but I think there's a big opportunity out there for communal farming. Yeah.
And I'll just add quickly, 2 projects, one in Rochester and one in Maplewood in the last couple of years that have gained sizable amounts of land, have gotten over 150 people farming there and trying to move to larger land almost instantly. And the kinds of cooperative marketing strategies like the Good Acre and others are using they fill their capacity very quickly. So every measure of are there people interested in this has basically been answered yes, emphatically.
Great. So we can move on to the breakout rooms where we'll all have opportunities to discuss everything we've been talking about so far in a more small group setting. And so basically in these breakout rooms, I think, Gary, if you want to explain how it's going to work.
All right. Thank you, Noah. So within the breakout rooms, you're going to have an opportunity to just discuss your personal and professional experience navigating FSA lending programs. If you're not familiar, then you're also going to have a chance to learn through that discussion and learn from and ask questions to the navigator that's in each breakout room. And a couple of things to bring notice and pay attention to is, what are the common experiences and threads that emerge as you're sharing about navigating FSA loans, and also how equity can inform your approach to navigating the FSA programs.
Great. Just gonna take a second to create the breakout room, so if people want to get up and stretch their legs or Okay, I'm gonna send you all out to the breakout rooms, and it would be great if the person who's the FSA expert could just identify themselves, so people know where to direct their questions, right? Okay, great. I think that's everyone. We have 10 minutes for just a general discussion. If people want to share things that stood out from their breakout room conversations, common themes in your experience, and also just thinking about how the idea of equity should inform your approach to FSA loans as a service provider. So the floor is open. Maybe if you can raise your hand or just put your name in the chat and I'll call on you.
I'm glad to see Jenny. Hi, Jenny, from MDA, Minnesota Department of Agriculture. I will make a comment in regards to the down payment assistance.
Uh-oh.
Well, Jenny, we already know, you and I had many conversation about that. And, I'm just really, really thankful for Minnesota Department of Agriculture and their patience. But I think it's such a wonderful program, and just looking forward to that program expanding and hopefully more young farmers, immigrant farmers, Black farmers, BIPOC farmers can gain access to this wonderful resource that we missed because of again these requirements and restrictions that limited us because of timing. Going back to my presentation about a lot of these programs and agencies, oftentimes when you're submitting something, it's about the timing, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Jenny, but I really would love for you to say something about the program and just how it ties to this conversation we're having today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Naima. We appreciate feedback on these programs. We know that they're not without their flaws. They go through a lot in legislature and then administratively to get where they are. So hearing feedback from everyone about the programs only helps us improve. So thanks to everyone today for sharing their stories. But the program name is referencing, I put in the chat, it's Minnesota's new down payment assistance grant. It's $15,000 grants for first-time farm buyers. In this second round of funding that we just wrapped up, we have preference given to emerging farmers, which is a pretty broad definition of farmers, but it does include BIPOC farmers, LGBTQ farmers, but as well as young and urban farmers and some other underserved groups. We've launched it this year and it's been really exciting to be part of. Happy to answer questions. I do have to leave in a minute or two, but feel free to email me my contacts on that page and call me too.
Go ahead, Laurie.
Thanks for bringing it up, Naima. And for Jenny, do you know in the future, we can even get more finite here on some of the offerings from MDA? There are some things that definitely, folks in certain, growing areas don't even qualify for. So when we talk about we're going to offer things to those who grow, ethanol corn and things like that, that's extremely specific. Can't we get down to a certain point where we just say food farmers, meaning those who market direct to the public, to institutions? Can we get down to that level of offering programs to them? Because that's, the real amount of folks that we're talking about here. Thank you.
Yeah, those kind of restrictions usually have to be defined in state law. It's not something we can generally do on the administrative end. We need some heavier authority to make those kind of distinctions. But I agree. I think that the emerging farmer definition as it is now is extremely broad. We do have some net worth and like sales limits for this program specifically. So, but it's still pretty large. $250,000 in sales is what you're limited to for this program. But it's something, that does keep it to the small and medium farms. And there's certainly room to work on those things. I know we've got some great people in the commissioner's office supporting these programs, as well as in our advocate groups around the state, like Farmers Union, Land Stewardship, Renewing the Countryside, all these groups.
We have time for maybe one or two more comments or questions. Great. So next we have Stephen Carpenter, who is going to give a presentation. And yeah, so Stephen, if you wouldn't mind taking it away, you can share your screen, introducing yourself and that kind of thing.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. First, I want to say what a great and inspiring presentation from Naima. It's really, one thing I know for sure is that there's a determination there. When you got all the way through that, there was a determination involved, and also it's just great that you did get some help. We can't expect everybody to be able to do that on their own. So my name is Stephen Carpenter. I'm a lawyer with Farmers Legal Action Group and FLAG. And FLAG is a nonprofit law firm that works on behalf of family farmers. And we've been around for a long time and are based in Minnesota, although we really actually do work pretty much nationwide. We do some things specific for Minnesota, have worked with MDA on various things at times. We have actually done a lot of work on farm loan things. And so my topic today, and I just want to check, do we want to wrap up by 30 after? Let's assess here. What's our timing look like?
Yeah, we're gonna try to wrap up at 2:30 Central Time. And
Excellent.
There's some flexibility in how long your presentation can be because I have time for questions. So
yeah, so my goal here is going to be to present for about 10 minutes, and then we can do questions for as long as people want. I'm available. And if something seems bizarrely confusing, feel free to interrupt. We don't have that many people, or put it in chat, and we'll definitely get to everybody's questions. So I wanted to say kind of two things, and they're both about Farm Service Agency loans. And there's sort of a good and a bad here, and they're both matter a great deal. The good is the idea behind these loans. As Naima pointed out, can feel really imposing to try to get them. But the thing is with these loans, both for buying land and also for operating loans and buying equipment and seed and fertilizer is they actually are good terms. The interest rates are lower. The collateral requirements are not as much as a bank would be, and actually the regulations are probably about to change so that the collateral required is less than it is now. Collateral is what you promise to the lender that they can come and take from you if you don't make your payment on time. So when you have a car loan, you're borrowing money, whatever amount, and your collateral is the car. Mortgage, you're borrowing money and the collateral is the house. And so up until recently, collateral rules at FSA have been relatively good, but still, I think, higher than they needed to be. So they're about to change that. So, but and also importantly, if you get in trouble with an FSA loan, you get behind on your payments. By law, they are not allowed to just jump straight into a foreclosure. They have to offer you a chance to reschedule the loans, stretch out the payments, defer payments. And I'm really not trying to be a salesperson for FSA loan programs. Our office has sued them many times, and they would not think of us as their super close best friend. But I have to say that the programs are better than just going to a bank. Try to go to one of the big banks and get a farm loan as a small scale farmer, and they won't even really know what you're talking about. So at our work, what we feel like is that these are great programs, but we want them to work for everybody. So at Farmers Legal Action Group, that's a lot of what we do, is try to push to make sure these programs really give everybody an opportunity. And that has involved lawsuits against them. And so the first thing I just want to say is these programs can be good. The rules are actually pretty darn good. The second thing is, that's the bad part, is that FSA has a hard time running these programs in a way that's fair to everybody. And I think, mostly when we think about this, we try to think about how to make it better for the future. But we have a moment now where if people have had dealings with Farm Service Agency loan programs and they've been discriminated against, there's a program out there where you can sign up and do an application, and you can be eligible for financial assistance if it is decided that there was discrimination. And so this is a congressionally created program. It's nationwide. It's about $2.2 billion. So it's a real thing. And I'm going to share my screen in a minute, or maybe I'm just going to put in the chat. I think that the time is so short, it doesn't really make sense to share screens. I'm going to put in the chat my email, and I'm going to put a link to the Farmers Legal Action Group website, where there's a 4-page description of the program that I'm about to describe. And it's got a funny name. Every USDA program has to have a funny name. It's called the USDA Discrimination Financial Assistance Program. And here's what it does. What it says is that if you tried to get or got a farm loan, the type of loan that we just heard described, and you experienced discrimination when you dealt with the agency on trying to get that loan, then you can file an application and you can be eligible for financial assistance, actually up to $500,000. Now, most people aren't going to get anywhere close to that, but actually I think that for people that are able to show that there was a discrimination by USDA, many people are going to get in the tens of thousands of dollars. And so there are a couple of things to remember. First of all, I think it's worth emphasizing the deadline to file an application for this is October 31st. So it's as with everything with USDA, it's not simple. It's kind of a longish application, but there is help out there. There are nonprofit organizations that are helping people fill out these forms. And so if you went in and tried to get a farm loan with FSA and they discriminated against you by denying you, by discouraging you from getting a loan, by giving you the loan but giving you worse terms than they should have, there's a decent chance that that counts as discrimination and that you can get some financial assistance. So the definition we have to, so what is discrimination? Discrimination is when you're treated differently based on, we could just say, an improper reason. So let's say you applied and you got denied, but somebody else was with the same finances, got the loan. Why did that happen? If it was because of an improper reason, that's discrimination. And the improper reason can be race, national origin, which includes ethnicity, sex, your gender, whether you're binary, whether you're gay. You know, it's a pretty long, comprehensive list of the ways that people are become marginalized in this society, and especially marginalized when they hope to try to farm. So if you dealt with FSA and you were treated differently based on the fact that, for example, you're Spanish speaking, that counts as discrimination based on national origin. Or if you were denied a loan because you are a woman and you have an FSA office that thought, well, girls can't really farm, right? Which is just not true and is a form of discrimination. If you can show that that happened to you, tell your story, provide some documents that show that you farmed or tried to farm, that you tried to get a loan from FSA, there is a realistic chance that you're going to be eligible for financial assistance. So that's really the basics of what's happening. The discrimination, it should be pointed out, needs to have happened before January 1st of 2021. So, and it can go back a long time. There are people out there who were discriminated against in the 90s, and they can file an application here as well as anybody else. If your discrimination was in 2000, you can file that application. If it was just this spring, that's too late. So it's January 1st of 2021. I want to emphasize that it's possible to get assistance. There's a toll-free line that can help line you up with people that that are familiar with these applications. You can go to our website and get the 4-page summary of the program. We're also writing, there's a much longer summary that we wrote. The 4-page has links to all the stuff that you would need. And so it's going back to the sort of the original point. Here's one example, and we don't have very many in this country, where Congress has said it really was the case that people were treated wrongly, and we're going to spend some money to try to help the folks that did experience discrimination. And it's not a sham. I mean, it's not like it's going to make everybody as whole or as help them as well as it should or could, but it's real money. It's $2.2 billion. They're really going to pay this money. It's not a fake program. It's not a scam. This money will go to people. So if you believe that you were discriminated against on one of these illegal bases, you know, that we're familiar with, again, race, sex, gender, etc. And if, you know, I would encourage you to consider applying for this. So we're working with a lot of grassroots farm organizations all across the United States, in Indian country, Black farmers in the South, Hispanic farmers in the Southwest. We at Farmers Legal Action Group are working on this thing every day, and so we just wanted to make sure that people knew about it here in the Upper Midwest. So what we're about to do is, I think we should just do questions. I am going to put my information here. And thank you, Valentine. Thank you, Valentine, for putting the link. So that's a link to our 4-page guide. We have it in English, and the Rural Coalition, a great national organization that we work with, put their hotshot translators on it, so we have it in Spanish too. So I'm going to put my email, and you should feel free to email me with any questions. And I just want to say, we're not FSA. We don't work for FSA. No, that if you asked FSA, they would definitely think we don't work for them. But I do think that here's one thing that's happening that is for the good, and that is to say, give people a chance to get some financial assistance when they have faced discrimination in the past. It's not going to fix everything, but it's a something. It's a real thing.
We have time for maybe 2 or 3 questions.
I share the same feeling in terms of my love and frustration with FSA. But I do have a question and comment for you in regards to, what I've noticed initially when I was trying to get this resource from FSA, the direct loan, is that they were insisting that I should go to a traditional lender and provide a denied loan before I even try to submit application with them. Have you experienced anyone that went through that? And if so, I get frustrated when they always tell you to go attempt to go get a loan from traditional lender, when from their website, based on the criteria, that you meet those criteria without even submitting the application. So if you can comment on that, please.
So I don't know, there may be FSA people on the call. I hope I'm not going to hurt anybody's feelings. What you just described is just a flat violation of their own rules. So what their own rules say is that if somebody comes in to apply, after they get your information, they look at your whole situation, and they think that you could go out and get a loan, at a bank. They have the power to say you should go check with the bank, but only after they looked at your information. And it's not just that, it's not enough to say, well, you could have got a loan from somewhere else. Heck, you could have farmed with a credit card, right? But that's not an answer. I mean, it's not an answer you should go for, right? So it's not just that you get a loan, but that you get a loan on terms that are right for you. So the fact that you could go to a pawn shop or a loan shark and get a loan to farm, I mean, even to say that sounds stupid, but it's almost as stupid to say, well, you should go try at a big bank, because if by some miracle they made you the loan, it's not going to likely be for the purposes that you really need, with the terms that you really need. And so they just made you jump through hoops that they shouldn't have made you do, especially at that stage. And I mean, the kernel of the sort of the true kernel hidden in there is, it is true that these programs are for people that can't get credit that meets their needs elsewhere. Fair enough, right? But they don't know that until they really look at your stuff. And if they tell you to go out, it should be because you've just got great finances and could get a loan anywhere. That's the only person that should happen to. And how many people are like that? So that's, yeah.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
So, Stephen, you just said that my mind is kind of blown, because I was also told when I started the FSA loan process years ago, they were like, basically, we work with people who've been denied everywhere else. So that violates the terms. Is that what you said? Could you confirm that?
Sure. So, I mean, again, the kernel here is that they're only supposed to make loans for people who can't get credit elsewhere. So there's a kernel of reality to all this, a kernel in the federal law, which allows them to function. This is a part of the statute. But, and a long time ago, many years ago, they actually did have a requirement that you had to get a written denial. But that has not been in place for quite some time. So certainly not, when Naomi was, Naomi, good heavens, sorry.
Naima.
Okay.
Naima, I'm sorry. Naima was trying to get a loan. That was long ago past. But, you have these people in local offices and they just sometimes do what they want, right? And so, so your experience, if it was fairly recent, probably also violated their own rules.
Yeah, it was like 2015, 2014.
Yeah, I mean, I could look it up, but I mean, that might. And I think it might be for one narrow kind of loan, an emergency loan, they call it, if you've been in a natural disaster, like, you're in a hurricane or something. They might have a piece of that still remains, but in general, if you try to get buy a land with a loan or get operating money with a loan, they should only have sent you to other lenders once they looked at your finances and decided, hey, this should be no problem for you to get a loan.
So if you tried to apply and were denied in that way, like they sent you away, would that be grounds for a discrimination claim?
If they sent you away without even looking at your stuff, that's certainly against their rules. And one really good way to show that the way they treated you was discriminatory is when they violate their own rules. Because if you think about it, we can kind of assume that usually they do the right thing, especially when it's white men, who roll in. And if they start treating people of color or women or trans folks differently, and they start treating them in ways that violate their own rules, then that gets us a very long way down the road to saying that that's discriminatory. And so I think when they violate their own rules, if you know of examples where other people didn't have to face that, that's something that you should say in the application. But actually, if you can just show they violated the rules, my sense here is that people are going to be able to get some financial assistance.
I will say we have like 2 more minutes left in the Q&A, and so we can totally do one more question. It'll just have to be pretty brief.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
I have one more follow-up with that. Is I got to meet with the administrator of the FSA, Zach Dushnow, this spring when I was in DC, and we were talking about these types of things. And as an emerging farmer, and you're starting this application process, you kind of have an idea that maybe people are taking advantage of you, or like, well, that's not right, and it's really gray, And so he actually was advising us on like, get everything in writing and he was teaching us how to like trip people up and like get proof of discrimination, which is wild that it's coming from like the top within the agency to say like, if they deny you, like send a receipt of the interaction to be like, okay, so to confirm no because of blah. And so it's like one more tool we need to have now to navigate this. And I just thought that was kind of wild. So thank you.
Mr. Dushnow is not your average USDA administrator, and he's not a career person. He was a long-term advocate. He was on Flag's board, actually. I mean, I know him.
Yeah, he's good people.
Very good guy and in a very powerful position.
He's on our team.
I mean, I don't want to make the whole thing political, but this is not a guy who was serving the Trump administration. Let's just say that. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well, and I'll just put in a word that's like a joyful bureaucracy moment, which is one of our through lines. Like, it doesn't all have to suck. So I have a couple of follow-up questions for the cohort as a whole, as we think about our next sessions. So one of them is a bit of Minnesota self-consciousness. Like I realize we've ended up kind of defaulting to some Minnesota cases and Minnesota Department of Ag and some other conversations. And I am proposing in the next couple of sessions, so in the beginning of October and the beginning of November, that we stick with this first Wednesday time. And what we'll do is kind of check, like as the farming season wraps up a bit, we'll check in with the larger cohort to see if a slight adjustment might make it easier for more people to participate. But this seemed to work for all the people who showed up. So thank you. And my question is really, if we focus in on some of the resources and advocacy that's currently in place. So one of the things I've been working with Stephen on a lot is trying to figure out, say, in Minnesota specifically, how can we get more farms classified as agricultural? How can we get more farms qualifying for the Green Acres, which is the tax deferment program? I'm curious if that is useful to the larger cohort, like if those are topics that people would be interested in, because what we have been finding is that in the realm of tax assessment, that a lot of the same kinds of slippage between what tax assessors are looking for and what farmers are doing that might be outside the box of conventional commodity agriculture that they have been trained to look for is reducing the equity in the application of those programs. So kind of, I guess, thumbs up, like questions. I guess one of my specific questions is, if we did that and looked specifically at the Minnesota cases, would it be helpful to also try to find some of the equivalents in Wisconsin and Illinois and Iowa and other states? Or is it useful to kind of focus on this and then kind of expand out from there? Do people have thoughts on that? Is that a topic of interest? I see some vague nodding, so I'm gonna. Were you gonna say something?
I guess speaking from Wisconsin, you know, and a busy day and all that.
Yeah.
If there weren't an explicit tie to something that would apply in Wisconsin, I would probably skip that one.
Okay. Well, and that may be something that we do then, like also in breakout rooms by location. So we will. That's super helpful. I have a suspicion that Minnesota has some of the strictest rules, although I suspect that parallel rules are still being enforced in these differential ways from what I've been hearing in other states. So we'll work on creating a more, we'll send out a good description for what we're able to put together. Other question that's parallel is, following up on today's FSA conversation, we were interested in inviting some of the folks from the newly opened urban offices, because a lot of the folks in our cohort are urban or urban, like near urban. And we have relationships with the folks in the Twin Cities office, but would it be interesting for people if we got the Grand Rapids and Detroit and Chicago office staff, if we invited them to come introduce themselves as well? I don't know if there's a Milwaukee office, I realize, but
That's going to be my question.
Does anyone else know that? Well, I can find out, and I will send that around. So I have posed that question to FSA people. We thought it would be good if they could come, and run us through. I was waving around this guide at the beginning of, like, here are some of the resources. And then Kara Komodo, who was here earlier, and I have been working on some guides, just thinking about some of those resources that people navigate. And we thought that would be a good conversation as well, of, like, beyond some of these larger ticket, what are some of the other things that we navigate and ways to make those more equitable in our practice, which might be kind of more of like a sharing around this. And then the last topic that we've been trying to put in that slate for the next few months is around easements and questions around equitability in easements, and some of the ways that cultural easements and other easement processes have been responding to some of the critiques. Because as a geographer, I'll say, we know that easements tend to keep power and wealth in the hands of landowners and those who are able to afford financial transactions. And there's a lot of work kind of happening around the racial equity edge to try to make easements a better tool for equitable farmland tenure. So is that a topic of interest? Cool. All right.
Totally love that. I'm just chiming in.
Fabulous. Cool. Well, I will, we, as a team, we'll keep reaching out to you. And if we have some ideas and we're like, should we go this way or that way, we'll ask for some response. But I realize we're at time. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Naima, so much for sharing your story, and Stephen for both of you taking the time to give such good complementary expertise on this topic. And thank you all for showing up on a Wednesday afternoon. It's always great to learn with you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thanks, Noah, for stepping in as Aaliyah moves to her own farming project. We're really grateful to get to work with you as well.